Yo, book nerds! I finished reading House of Many Gods by Kiana Davenport. This book was wonderful. Why have I never heard of this author or this book before? I definitely want to check out some more books by her. I loved this. Definitely having a book hangover after reading this story. This story is about a girl named Anna. I guess I pronounce her name Anna. I don't know if it's supposed to be pronounced Anna. I say Anna. But anyway, Anna lives in Hawaii. She's native to Hawaii. And let me tell you, her family is crazy. This girl grows up in the most whirlwind of a family. Anna was abandoned by her mom when she was, I think, 4, if I remember correctly. She was 4 years old when her mom left. And so she was raised in Hawaii by her aunts and uncles and her cousins. And they all live together in this tiny little house. And they live in a very poor part of Hawaii. And there's a lot of crime in this part of Hawaii. And Anna grows up to be this very strong, independent woman. And she wants to get out. She wants to become a doctor, and she wants to do better for herself. And this story is just amazing. Oh my gosh. The characters in here are so real. They are flawed, but they are beautiful. And Davenport just does an amazing job of writing characters that you care about. I loved all of these characters, and all of them have issues. Some of them, you think you would downright hate them, but you don't. She is so good at writing morally gray characters, but characters that you love. This story also tackles so many issues. So first of all, this book tackles issues of family. Anna grows up without her mother. Her father died. And so she doesn't have her parents, and she grows up with abandonment issues. And then this book also tackles environmental issues. So Anna lives in a part of Hawaii that is close to where the US military has been testing bombs. And so it tackles things like destroying sacred land and also nuclear fallout affecting food, water, air quality, things like that. And so this book has so many layers to it. But Davenport does such an amazing job of weaving all these things together. Honestly, it's just a beautiful tapestry that she weaves, and it just flows so well, and it doesn't feel like too much or too confusing or complicated. It just is wonderful. I highly recommend this book. And I think it tackles some very important topics that are still very relevant today. I really want to talk about this book more in depth, so here is your spoiler alert. So, Anna's mother left her when she was a child, and then she comes back into her life later on. And so this book tackles huge topics like that, like abandonment, and some chapters are from Anna's perspective, and some chapters are from her mother's perspective. And so you get to see Anna's mom's side of things, and Davenport does such a good job of making you care about Anna's mother, because it'd be really easy to write her off and hate her because she abandoned her child. But her mom is so much more than just that one thing. She's a complex human being, and we get to see that. Anna's mom is named Anahola, which is Anna's full name. They have the same name, so it does sometimes get confusing, the fact that they have the same name, because sometimes they're both called Anna and sometimes they're both called Anahola. But eventually you get used to that. But yeah, so there's some very deep questions in here about family and about right and wrong when it comes to raising a child. It asked some very, very deep questions, and honestly, I don't know the answers to some of these questions that were asked, but it was so good. And then you have the issues of the military and the US government not respecting Native Hawaiians, not respecting their sacred lands, using those sacred lands to test bombs, and they destroy the land. And you get to see like through Hawaiian culture, how important the land is to them. And so it's horrible what the government and military have done to their land. The other side of this doesn't just take place in Hawaii. There's this other character named Nikolai, also called Nikki, and Nikki is from Russia. And so this book also tackles some of the environmental issues in Russia. Again, nuclear fallout and radiation poisoning and things like that, and how awful Russia had been to its own people and how damaging. But this book just handles these complex topics so well. You see characters that have had exposure to radiation and they end up getting cancer, or there are mutations in children and things like that. And Nikki is trying to make a documentary to show the world these horrors. And that's how Nikki ends up in Hawaii, because he's filming all these environmental things all over the world. So he starts off in Russia, where he was born, and works his way out from there. This book is just so complex. You see themes like history repeating itself. Anahola was abandoned by her mom, and then Anahola abandoned Anna. So you see the similarities between the two Annas. And then there's also similarities between Anna and her aunt Emma, who was one of the women that raised her. Emma died from breast cancer, likely caused from exposure to radiation, and Anna ends up getting breast cancer. And so you see this theme of history repeating itself over these generations. You also see many characters die from these environmental issues. So you have Emma, who died from cancer. You have Max, who is Anahola's husband. He died of radiation exposure. And then you have Urini, who is Nikki's wife, who also died because of complications due to mutations from growing up in Russia, where there was radiation issues. So you see a lot of horrible things like that happening in this book too. So there is a line in here that I want to point out because it just got to me. So when Anna has cancer, Anahola is really struggling with it because she has a lot of guilt from abandoning Anna. And this line just got to me. I've got to point it out. And finally, Anahola grasped how the death of one's child was so against the order of nature, so incomprehensible, that the mere possibility of it left her seized and shaken. That line just stood out to me because I have honestly had conversations about this with my dad. Like, it's so unnatural for children to die before their parents. That's just not the way it's supposed to happen. So that line just reminded me of those conversations I've had with my dad. Like, children are supposed to outlive their parents. And Anahola is struggling with this guilt, and her daughter is now sick, and she's struggling with the fact that her daughter might die. And so there's just so many layers to this story. So again, spoiler alert, Anna does not die from her cancer. She recovers, and she wants to be a doctor, and she goes to college, and she works really hard, and she becomes a doctor. And then there's a hurricane on the island, and she does some volunteering, and then that is where she meets Nikki. Honestly, I thought the hurricane was going to be a bigger deal because it says on the back blurb like that this hurricane is what brings them together, and it does, but I just felt like the hurricane would be a bigger deal, but it's like hardly mentioned in the story, but oh well. It does bring them together. Honestly, I do like Nikki's character, but I'm here for Anna's story. Like, Anna and her family is what makes this story so great for me. Nikki's parts are interesting, and we do get some chapters from his perspective, but I am here for Anna's story. Honestly, Nikki could kind of be lifted right out, and I don't know that it would have affected how I felt about the story. I'm just so engaged with Anna and her family. But Anna does meet Nikki, and they have a romance, and their romance happens like really fast. And so like Anna has struggled the entire book, her entire life. She's struggled with commitment, and so the fact that like Nikki kind of falls in love with her, like it happens really fast, but Anna does not feel that same way back. And that's what makes it believable for me, because if Anna just fell head over heels in love with Nikki, I wouldn't believe it, because that's not the Anna that's been established in the book so far. But she does have feelings for him. She cares about him, but her feelings are very slow moving, and she doesn't admit them to herself. She thinks she's fine without him. He's just someone that's in her life right now. That's kind of her attitude, and that's what makes their relationship believable to me. So this book starts with Anna as a child and works all the way up to when she's a woman. So this book literally spans decades following Anna's life, but it never feels jerky. The time jumps are really smooth, and they work. I liked it. I felt like I was following her through her whole life. I understood Anna. I understood who she was. I knew what made her tick. I knew her. She was my friend. I grew up with her. Like, that's how it feels. So like I said, Anna has some major trust issues. And then Nikki, his visa's up and he ends up going back to Russia. And then Anna finally has a wake-up call going oh my gosh, I love him and he's gone. And Anna finds out she's pregnant with his baby. So she goes to Russia to bring him back. But Anna then has to rely on other people to help her get Nikki back, because she literally has no control, which is completely abnormal for Anna. She doesn't know how to handle that. It's so hard for her, and it makes her grow as a character, because she finally has to relinquish control over everything. And it is written so well. And then you find out that Anahola has been helping Anna her whole life without her really knowing. And that adds another layer to their relationship. Anna is in Russia and trying to smuggle Nikki out of the country pretty much. And Anahola is paying off people for her because Anna doesn't have the money to do it. And then you find out that Anahola has been paying for things for Anna's whole life. Paying for food, paying for their house pretty much, for repairs, paying for Anna's college. Anna thought her uncles had been paying for her college, but really it was her mom. And Anna has struggled with her mom her entire life. Her mom has tried to come back into her life and she has pretty much rejected her. But then you find out that she's been there in the background helping Anna this whole time. And so it's very complex. Anna's emotions are all over the board with that, as you could expect. It's very, very well written and very messy. Oh my gosh. I can't imagine what Anna would be feeling. Eventually, Anna does get Nikki out of Russia and they go back to Hawaii, and Anna has her baby, and pretty much they live happily ever after. They're breaking generational patterns. Anahola's mom abandoned her, and then Anahola abandoned Anna. Anna does not abandon her daughter. She has a girl. She names her Anahola, so there's 3 Anaholas now. And they're breaking generational patterns. They're healing. It's such a nice, happy ending. The bombing in their valley has ceased momentarily. Protests and such have made progress, and so it's so happy at the end. It seems like Anna's destiny is all wrapped up in the destiny of her valley. She finally comes to terms with her life and the things that her mom did and her family. She comes to terms with that, and then their valley is saved from the ravages of these bombs. And so it's all very nice and happy feeling at the end, except that it's not over. It ends on a note where they know that the bombing might resume. So there is continued need to keep pushing for that not to happen. And I'm happy that it ended on that note, because Anna's life has been a crazy, crazy ride, but she definitely deserves a happy ending. But that happy ending doesn't need a bow on it. In real life, it's not so nice and sweet. I like that everything's not all perfectly tied up at the end. So the story definitely goes on. I just highly recommend this book. I think it tackles such complex topics and does it in such a way that you see both sides of the argument, and it just shows how messy these situations can be. Even with the bombing, Davenport talks about how Anna's uncles are vets and how her uncles feel like, well, the military needs practice because another war's always going to be here. So even though they're hurting their sacred lands, you can see both sides of the argument. Her uncles aren't against this kind of bombing. And so, like, honestly, Davenport just does such a great job of tackling all these issues. And man, the story that you get along with it is just awesome. I definitely have book hangover with this book. If you've read this, let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you loved it as much as I did. I honestly loved this so much. I loved the cultures that I got to see. It was new for me. I loved it though. It was beautiful. Davenport's writing is so lyrical, it feels almost like poetry sometimes. It is just beautiful writing. I definitely want to check out more by her, so if you have any recommendations, let me know those in the comments. So if you have not read this, I definitely recommend checking it out. It is so worth it. That's all I have to say about this book, and I hope you guys will check it out. I'll see you guys next Monday. I hope you have a great week. Hit like and subscribe. Thanks for talking books with me.